work this time. Don't just switch off. I need to see that little red light shining, okay? Not convinced. Right, having rejigged the workspace, sorry about that. I'm going to have to restart all of this blabber. Yada yada yada, rework, move the lights around, yada yada yada. Come back with a different guitar. And the guitar I've come back with is a very handsome, and you can probably make it out from the headstock, Burny Super, what can I read it? Super Relics, no, what is it? I can't see, I haven't got to clean my glasses up. It's a Burny Les Paul copy, one of the really nice Les Paul copies out there in the world, very highly sought after. I've not seen one in the flesh or played one, but I'm going to show you up close. It's a Burny Super Local. What the hell is it? Sorry, I look like a fool. It's a Super Super Grade model. Oh, I'm sorry to be so snotty, but I really couldn't make sense of that. You work it out. But it's a Burny, and Burny's well respected and well liked. And it is beautifully made, I've got to say. Every bit of it is handsome. It's got EMG active pickups with a 9-volt battery, or two 9-volt batteries rolling around inside the back somewhere, which I haven't explored yet. Tune-o-matic bridge. Forward-leaning posts holding up the tailpiece, which is interesting. It's got the thumb adjusters, no screw at the top, very authentic to the Gibson Les Paul thing. I did point out to John earlier on, when I picked this guitar at first, I can feel a crack there in the join, so it's obviously this guitar's banged its head somewhere. The crack doesn't appear to have extended down there, so it's a very mild one. Nice two-piece mahogany looking thing. A bit of a rattle with the batteries, unfortunately. So the reason I had the thingy gauges out is, I'm not going to go through the rigmarole again, but the first thing that struck me with this guitar was that the string action over the first fret is quite high, and I could see that straight away. And having just measured it now, I've measured it at 0.65 millimeters, so that's just over half a millimeter. Now, that doesn't sound like much in kind of measurement terms, but actually, when you think that the distances that I would be aiming for on a guitar like this, the ideal distance would be about 0.25. You're talking 3 times higher an action than is ideal for this guitar, or for a guitar. So that's an interesting thing. It's a replacement nut. It's been put on by another luthier, but it really is a lot higher action than I would play. Partly what's informing my decision to work on this a bit is the fact that John said that he has difficulty tuning this guitar, and one of the things I wanted to check was quite often we find it's not very visible on this guitar, strangely enough, but one of the things you can often see is when you put get a tuner up. I think you can probably see that, and we'll tune it right fairly well in tune E, and then you press an F. It's slightly sharp of the note. On this guitar, actually, it's not as bad, and I'm not quite sure why, but it is a little bit sharp, and so it will have an effect on the intonation of the guitar. But the most obvious thing, even while it's a beautifully made guitar, the most obvious thing that I can see straight away about this that makes it not ideal to play is the height of these slots. So I'm going to take those down. The luthier's done the right thing with it. He's kind of cut the nut in such a way that the strings sit above the edge. You can feel them, and some people say they really like that, and that's the proper way to do it. In my experience, it doesn't matter so long as the slot doesn't pinch the string in any way. but having the cosmetic or aesthetic look of this is not worth the price of having too high an action. So I guess what I'm saying is, if the only reason that these things are high over the first fret is because they're being cut deliberately to sit there in so-called proper appearance, then it's a really stupid compromise in my view. Sorry, it's not a very nice word. It's a mistaken priority. The priority for me is getting the first fret action to a decent height once we've already set this. So this guitar is going to get a full work over, and the first thing I'm going to do with it is I'm going to put this away, because we kind of know already that it's got high action. Now, having reset everything here, I now create a bit more room for myself, which hopefully makes a bit better viewing, although I don't know, we shall have to see. Now with this guitar, it's got quite a steep angle like all good Les Pauls, so I'm going to be cautious about making sure it has support where necessary. Sometimes it's hard to find where it really needs the support, but that's fairly well supported. The first thing I'm going to do then is I'm going to take off these strings. They're in fairly good condition, but we're not going to try and save them. They're 10s, and I'm going to replace the strings on this guitar with another set of 10s when we're done. But as I say, we're going to do the whole setup work on this, and that will include the fret leveling and the cleaning of the fretboard and all manner of bits and pieces. So we're going to want to restring it with new strings at the end. Okay, so I'm just going to take these and cut them. Sometimes it's worth, and I do have, actually no, I'll tell you what, I'm going to keep these set. Sometimes it's worth keeping sets of strings if you can get them off reasonably cleanly. When I say cleanly, the issue is, can you get them off without too many kinks in them? Because if you get them with loads of kinks in them, they're practically impossible to re-thread on any guitar. And the only reason I'd keep them is not to use them to play, but to keep them as a test set that sometimes you can really do with a spare set of strings, just to put on a guitar to put the neck under tension, get it up to its proper relief, for example. Just turn the old heater off there. It's not exactly cold. It's this amazing Indian summer we've got. So I'm taking my sweet time with this. So this is a really interesting job to do for an interesting customer who is a guitar teacher, a professional musician and a guitar teacher. And so from my perspective, he's not only he's a nice chap, he's also somebody who uses a guitar every day for a living, and plays a really important role in encouraging other people into playing guitar. And so, it's a kind of, he's passionate too about having guitars where the basics are set up right, and I like that kind of energy for for introducing kids to guitar. And if there's a way, I don't know, we were talking about it today, if there's a way I can help him to ensure that kids' guitars are properly set up wherever possible, I really like that sort of mission, really, because it's just miserable to try and learn on something that isn't correct or is 100 times harder to play than it needs to be. And for the sake of getting a few key things properly taken care of, then I don't know. So maybe we should try and get schools to do it right. I know that my stepson's school had some really clunky old Encore guitars, and they were in a right state. I'm just going to take this slightly hopelessly crimped end off this. So we'd never stand a chance of getting that through the body of a guitar again. So we always have to take that off if we're going to try and reuse these. Yeah, so Thomas's school had a bunch of Encore guitars, and they were, by all accounts, they were just lousy condition. And because they, they're not owned really by any individual, and they don't get looked after that well. So over time they become they're subject to abuse, but I think from the beginning nobody really sets them up correctly, or probably, not probably, almost certainly nobody knows to kind of tell the kids how to do it. It's not really, probably not really part of the curriculum, or it's too complicated or something. So I'd be really kind of interested to see if that could be something that they learned as well as learning to play, because I think to go forward in life being interested in playing the guitar, but then also being able to take a budget guitar and make it into something that's much more playable than you started out. I think that's a pretty good skill. Now for this guitar, I'm always looking for a container. And here I have one, and it has some sticky tape on it, and I'm going to write the word, the legend, Burny Les Paul onto here. So I know that whatever I take off, excluding these here strings, will go into that pot. So I'm just going to tag these strings together, hopefully in such a way that they don't completely tangle up before I want to use them again. It would be nice if I could just use them the once for something or other. Maybe live and learn how to do this. Most of the time they just get hopelessly tangled, and it's more trouble than it's worth for the sake of having something to take the tension up on a guitar. But there we go, that's really reasonably good nick, and if I fold it through once like this, then I have a loop and I can attach it to something somewhere. I don't know, I'll put it up there so I can grab it some other time, up in the rafters. Okay, so off comes the various pieces. They could do with a good clean, but I'll put them in here just for the time being. We'll take out these posts as well, give us a chance to clean around and clean the whole body. And out come the action, the bridge woofers. And funnily enough, this is the first time I've had my hands on these, being so far only working on cheaper Les Pauls, or I should say Les Paul copies to be completely correct, and as a result never having seen the real McCoy equipment. Now you might think that wouldn't be very confidence inspiring for the person letting loose with this, but off that comes. The little thing on nut on the back will go into the container with everything else. There you go. Again, we'll give that a little clean, why not? And we'll take this. Oh, that's a non-standard screw. That's an ugly screw to be doing that job there. It's not good at all. That's a shame. Ooh, hiss. We shouldn't be using something as grim as that. Still, we'll come back to that. So part of what I always like to do is to do a complete clean while I'm about anything. Hoping these pots just come whizzing off to the touch. Mostly they do. A kind of vice-like grip. And when they don't, you get yourself 2 bits of cloth, and you get yourself the plastic thingies, 2 cloths. This one's a bit mucky. That one's mucky too, but it will do for this job. You put your cloths either side to protect your finish. I don't know if you can see this very well from there. And you put under put your plastic under, and you put your plastic under, and you basically kind of just ride the plastic knobs up. Come on, plastic knobs, under you go, and off you come. This one doesn't want to come off. Well, it does eventually. And the same over here. Somebody did it with two little teaspoons, and seemed like a really good, clever little move. This way is a bit fiddlier, but I still worry about the idea of digging a teaspoon into anything. But hey, these people, they must know what they're doing. Under you go. Right, off you come. A little bit of levering on both sides, and then you have the things are off. Okay. Just a quick look over the back. Actually, while I'm at it, I'm going to have a quick look inside the back, because I haven't seen what's in here, and I think it'd be good for us to take a wee look. And if there is a loose battery compartment whizzing about, I think we should really find a way of locking it down, in a way that's sensible, because it doesn't really make sense to have it clanging about, if you ask me. But I could be horrified at what we find. I have no idea what lives on the inside of this beastie. So ooh! Yeah, my goodness, that really is flying about. One of these things has got a clip, and the other one doesn't. I'll show you up close. This is a mouthful of stuff. More than I like to see inside a guitar. But it's done in such a way that you can pull out things and change pickups and whatnot, by the looks of it, with easy switching. So that's a pretty smart move. That's really high tech. Look at that. There you are. Sorry, I'm looking at them. I'm showing the innards of the guitar to the lamp. There you go, lamp. There you go, camera. Yeah, but the problem is it's this baby here flopping about. This one's held. For some reason there's no equivalent thing. So I would like, if I may, to be able, where's the switch? Let's put that under there so we can keep this switch a little bit off the ground. I should like, if I may, to find some wee solution to that, because it seems a shame, but there is no obvious way other than a bit of Velcro, and I think I may have just gone and used up my last piece of Velcro. Damn it! I have. That would have been all right. Hang on a minute now. I've got a spare bit here, and I've got a reciprocal bit there. Let's borrow a tiny widget of this, because that's not doing anything. Just do it in a way that I don't cut my fingers off or slice through the power cable. Okay. One sharp thing. Off you come. So, right, I'm going to put this foul sticky bit on the battery. Dun, 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 and that will stay long enough. Now, I'll get myself a blade that actually cuts, instead of all these old knackered ones that don't. Too many of them floating about. I will get myself a ruler as a cutting surface. So this is kind of outside the normal here. Wouldn't normally be doing this because it's an unusual requirement. I'm going to cut a bit of this fuzz, and I'm going to wrap it round that little hump of wood, which is quite dry, so I hope it will stick. If not, we won't really be going anywhere with this idea, but it's worth a go. I just really shove that on as hard as I can go, and pop that in there, bury it down a little bit, and bob is your sticking. It's not going to go anywhere, but it's not going to rattle as much, that's for sure. So while I'm at it, I'm going to reinstall. Having tipped out everything, I now have to find the pieces I need again. I want those, and those. 4, that's 5, I don't want one of those. Okay, let's just put this back on and we will have at least stabilised that. It's not the most perfect solution, but I'm comfortable that that will stop it banging around disconcertingly the way it was just recently. And what it means is that when John comes to change it, I would recommend he gets himself another piece of Velcro and does the same thing. But it's a small price to pay, I think, to have the battery put in out of harm's way, because the bit that worried me as soon as I saw that was the potential for that battery to sort of knock around and break another connection in there. That's a lot better. That's not going, it's not rattling the way it was. Okay, so I'm going to put that back where it belongs, and we'll come to clean that in a minute. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get this guitar ready for the basic neck job. So I'm going to give the neck fretboard a good clean, and I guess what we're also doing while we're doing that is just looking at the condition it's in and seeing what we see. The old naphtha is jolly good stuff. You'll get all the grime well and truly out. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm looking at the frets as well, and there's a bit of wear on these frets. They're a little bit scratched in places. They're not hugely worn out, and they're nice. I think they're quite nice big jumbo frets, so that's pretty good. They'll make it quite easy to work on as far as our tools are concerned. It's pretty clean anyway. It's been done not too distant past by the looks of it. Cleaning, that is. I have no idea whether it's been fret treated or not, but we shall see. And of course the interesting bit about this whole thing will be having a look at the, oh dear, that is one loose rattly pickup. Why? Not good. Yeah, part of the thing would be to see how many frets are even and how many aren't. Now, you'd hope with a guitar of this pedigree that people seem to really like, you'd really hope that the frets would be in good, even condition. While I'm at it, I can't resist having a look and seeing why this is rattly, because it's a really nice, expensive, quality active pickup, and the fact that it's making a noise when you pick it up and play it is pretty, it's a real shame. You shouldn't be doing that. So let's have a look if there's anything we can do to stabilise this in its little housing. Well, my first impression is that it's rattling because it's got no, because it's too far in, or it's not. It's got no tension on the spring, so that the pickup is really, really low down. So if we bring it out a little bit, that actually stops it rattling. Which is, It's such a shame. It's a really nice quality pickup, and it's got some mega rattle. It tilts to one side. Why is that? That shouldn't allow it to do that much. Okay, I'm going to do a little tiny fix on both of these. which won't do any harm or good or bad, but it's going to stop the rattling because we don't want these. It's going to be affixed with a very, very fine sliver of foam which can be taken out at any point and will not harm anybody. But it'll just stop it clunking, and it also means we can take this pickup down again to its lowest possible level, which is where it was, if we need to. Again, slightly. Are these different? These housings appear to be, well, they are different because one's a deep one and one's a shallow one. But essentially, do they? That one, and that we can fit something in. That one, we could just fit something. We could do it in both. That's okay. Right. So I'm going to use a bit of this block that I've got, and I'm going to try and, I don't know how well I'll do this, but I'm going to try and cut it. Probably not going to work very well. I mean, it's probably going to work much better if I just chop away. Oh no, it's not too bad. Like carving a Sunday roast. Right, a little tiny sliver of foam. It doesn't have to be much, so that's good. I'm just going to cut 4 little pads basically from here. I'm going to end up poking them into place under the pickup. Oh, ripped, but there we are, it's not too bad. Okay, I'm going to cut that into 4 little squidgies. 1, 2, 3 and 4. I use this foam on my homemade whatchamacallit guitar. What's the word for it? Oak guitar. And I'm just going to use a blade to gently poke this bit of foam into the gap there, and it's not going to stick out anywhere else. Oh no, it is now. It's going to pop through there, but that's not what we wanted. Actually, that's all I want to do, just a little tiny bit there, like that. Can't see it from the other side. And I'll just cut this bit flatter. You can't see it, but it just about sits in place. Helps stop it from moving or bouncing too much. So I'm just going to pop that down there. It's nice. And then same here. This one probably could use a bit more because it's got a wider thing, but should be alright. Again, push that into the side there. And leave it just sitting at the bottom, near the bottom, because I don't want it to stick out the top. And a bit in there. See, that feels like it needs a bit more. Nice finishing. All the interior parts of the pickup cavity is all in really nice condition. Okay, hopefully that will just stop that moving quite so much. It's a minor little detail, but it's slightly unsettling the way it moves so much. So, how are we doing? Okay, still rolling. Got a friendly big fly come back in here. I hate those things. Now what I'm going to do is just screw these back in place, and then I'm going to go away. That is a massive screw. Why is that so big? slightly different from the others too. We've got some... Kill the fly, sorry. Go away, rubbish. Yeah, there's flat ones, round ones. So there's 4 different kinds of screws going on here. Obviously the ones at the back have to be a bit longer, but unfortunately they're also a different kind of screw. Still, it'll do. So a little detour there. Right, now what we're going to do, we are going to get the neck ready for the fret leveling treatment. Caught you. You thought you were going to escape. So yeah, we're going to prepare this neck to fret level. So John, if John's watching this, you'll have heard me talk about this before, so shut your ears off and go make a cup of tea or something. If you're watching this for the first time, or this is the first time you've seen one of these videos, just I want to point out that as far as we're concerned, that the fret leveling is the heart of a correct setup. And some people do a setup and do a fret dressing, as they call it, separately. For me, I can't see the point of doing a setup separately, or doing a setup without doing fret leveling, because the evenness of your frets, or the levelness of your frets, that needs taken care of, is fundamental to any action that you can possibly set. So I don't really see the point of trying to set a guitar up until you've made sure that the frets are level, and the frets are guaranteed never to be level, because they never are. So far, you can't see it anymore. Oh my god! Changed everything around. In here we have a leaderboard, fret leaderboard of shame, which is a record of which guitars that we've done have the best and worst frets in terms of levelness. And at the moment, every guitar that's come through here, so all 45 or 50 guitars we've done in total so far, since we started about 6 months ago, 100% of the guitars have uneven frets. Majority have about 60% uneven frets, and the best one so far, by miles, was a vintage V100 Les Paul copy. A expensive, and you would think very high quality, Ibanez RG series guitar had a scored 70%. 70% of its frets were uneven. So it's pretty much commonplace. We haven't seen a guitar yet without uneven frets. I doubt this one will be an exception, although it'd be really interesting if it is. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to get this neck ready, or get ready to protect this fingerboard. So the first thing before I'm going to do any more work is to protect the fingerboard, and to do that I'm going to use masking tape, and I'm going to use quite a bit of it because I want to kind of pinch it round the back and make a sort of grabbable tab, so that when it comes to remove it later on, when we've done the work, it'll be a lot easier. And this process takes a little while, and you need to cut the tape into thinner strips, which I'm going to need to do separately on a piece of wood. And I think I'm going to save you, I'll keep looking at the wrong place, the camera is no longer over there, to save you the misery. I'm going to miraculously do that by pressing stop, and I'll come back and it'll be done. Yo, magically, miraculously, ta-da! The guitar is, the fretboard is masked off and ready to go. And you'll notice I've done it in a particular way that makes it much easier to take off at the end of the game. So a bit of extra effort, but I'll be very glad for that at the end. So what I need to do is a couple of things. before we get onto this. I'm going to take the truss rod cover off because I need access to the truss rod. The reason for this is before we do anything with fret leveling, we've got to make sure that the neck is straight. It's really important. It's sort of number one on your checklist of things to do. So we'll take this cover off and we'll leave it off until pretty much we've got everything else done. It'll be one of the last things we put back on. So there we have it. I'm hoping this is a good old-fashioned Allen key adjustment, which it is. Just clean up a bit of the goo that's there. So let's put these tuners flat. So we're resting on the tuner casing and on the little foot thing there. So the thing I'm going to do, just to check and see if this is in fact flat, is I'm going to hold the neck up. Now it is under gravity, so it's going to sit backwards. I can put it on its side and look at it that way, and actually it's pretty flat in its unstrung position, and this side is kind of flat as well. And if I just look down it from the body end, I'd say that's pretty good. It's interesting, it's got a little kink in it. One of the things I've been learning recently is if you think about the way that the Les Paul guitar, unlike other guitars, is constructed, and it's probably not so good with all the tape on it to show you, but if you think about it, the neck fits into a cavity that's cut out right down to here. So the neck slots right in and it's glued all the way along this side here. So there's a big solid fix to this great chunk of wood. You can also see then that the neck itself, from here down to about here, certainly all of this chunk that's in there is 3 times thicker than this bit here. At least twice, probably nearly 2.5 times thicker. And it only actually gets to be its normal length about this fret here, which is about the 12th or the 13th fret. So let's say from the 12th fret where it actually becomes its normal thickness for the rest of the neck. So what you're looking at is this whole chunk of guitar here, just to be technical about it, you're looking at 5.5 inches of the neck is pretty much inflexible. Okay, so no matter what you do with the truss rod, this isn't really going to bend at all because it can't. It's certainly not here and probably not there because it's got this great thickness compared to down here. So often you'll see with the Les Paul neck, when you look at it, it'll be straight to exactly the 12th fret, and then it will, if at all, it'll bend from there onwards, which is a bit of an interesting thing, really. You've got a neck that you're trying to set a playing relief, and so it means inherently you're going to struggle on a Les Paul with the very top frets. There's no way ultimately you can get them. You can set a perfect playing action for them, or you can't get the perfect neck relief because that is going to be. Oops, I've missed a bit off. That is going to be pretty much fixed. So it's an inherent limitation that I've sort of noticed over the few of these Les Paul style guitars that I've done. And I first time I kind of noticed it, I was kind of convinced that the guitar I was looking at was broken or damaged or something was really wrong with it. But then I realised it was just par for the course with the Les Paul neck. And it didn't take long to work out that if you glue this great chunk of neck to this great chunk of mahogany, and it's also 3 times deeper than the rest of this neck, then this is just going to be absolutely solid. There's nothing about that's going to move. This will move, which does give you an interesting dynamic. You only have to think about it for a minute to see that it's going to be very odd. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is something that pencil. Okay, I'm going to do a test now because in the fret leveling process there are really 3 main stages. There's leveling the frets, there's reshaping them, because once you level them you make them flat, so to reshape them you've got to make each one of them into a kind of an arched shape as opposed to level flat at the top. So level them first, reshape them second, and thirdly polish them so that they're back up to a beautiful mirror smooth finish to play off, and with the objective that we get to the end and they are all perfectly level with each other when the guitar is in, or when the neck is in a flat position. It's really interesting that I've seen some of the top luthiers selling neck jigs that are designed to put the neck under playing tension. So for example, imagine they simulate the pull of the strings so the neck naturally pulls up away from the body, and you've got quite a lot of flexibility. You can see it when you press it, the neck flexes. And those people will use a jig to put the neck under tension, bend some kind of relief into it straight away, and then they'll go ahead and level frets with the neck in playing position, which strikes me as really strange, because if you do that, you are, we can imagine getting a curve, I suppose, how would you look at it? Curve like this, and then you're going down and running your thing up and down a curve. You're not going to get level frets. You're going to, the one between these two is going to be kind of untouched and so on. It's just really odd. I can't see how that works, to be honest. Anyway, the point being is, so far I've learned that as long as you level the neck, you will get a good start point with all the frets being even. Then when you put the relief into the neck, they will bow a little bit, but it will be so small that relative to each other, they will still be flat relative to each other. They won't be flat relative to one at the beginning relative to the end, but to the adjacent ones it will be relatively flat, and that's what matters when you're moving up note by note. Okay, so 3 stages: level, reprofile and polish. To do the leveling, if you're going to level your frets using a fret leveling file like this, you don't need to mark them, you just file away, and as long as you've taken some metal off the top of all of them, then they'll all be level. A way of helping that along is to put some marker pen on top, which we'll do, but an extra thing we're going to do that you don't need to do, but we're doing it because over there we've got the fret leaderboard of shame, which I'll kind of take you on a walk to show you in a minute, or later on before we finish. But for my edification, I'm going to check the frets on here, and straight away we found the first one we can check is not level. And what this does is you put the straight metal edge over 3 frets at a time, and you try and rock. And if you rock, if you can rock it, you'll hear it click, and it tells you that relatively this fret is relatively higher than these frets. Now it's not absolute, it's all relative, but it gives you a good indication of where there are problems relatively. So on this one I've got a problem at either end of it. So I'm just going to carry on like that all the way up the neck without putting too much pressure on. I don't want to bend the neck while I'm doing this. Now this fret appears to be high almost all the way up, and sometimes what you'll see is that there's a mirror between these two. There's a kind of a pattern, you see, where these edges appear to be high and the middle here appears to be high, and clearly you can see there's a relationship between those. Try and work that out if you will. It does my head in trying to work it out. All I know is that we will take care of that when we level the whole lot, and the Chinese riddle of that particular situation will disappear, thankfully. Now that's not very effective because I need to change the side I'm using. So that is actually incorrect. That is not an indication. So I'm going to take that off. Not wish to cast any aspersions on this particular piece of fretboard. There is nothing wrong there. Nothing to see here. Go on home. I used the wrong edge. That's my fault. So I'll start again. And there's a little bit at the end. And that's the lot for that one. And so on. Hooray, 1 fret with no rocking. And 1 fret with rocking in the middle. 1 fret with no rocking. Good, good. The reason I'm marking with green pen is that we will use, I will use black marker pen in a minute, but I'm being very cautious with it because it has a habit, a little bit there, the black marker pen has a habit of sneaking in down the side of the paper using capillary action, and if it gets one chance of it, it will whiz down the side of the paper and get onto the fretboard. It loves to do that. So I have to be very, very careful not to get it, let it do that. So I am avoiding using black marker pen, except where I really do need to in a minute, and you'll see when I need to. See, you can see that there's quite a lot of uneven frets going on here. They're not, none of them are extreme so far, but we're getting an a spot, a bit of high frettage on pretty much every single fret, most of them anyway. Now you see that I changed over the side of the fret rocking tool so that I'm now on the shortest edge. You could make this out of a credit card if you wanted to. I mean, metal's better, it obviously keeps its shape longer, but you can do a low-tech version of pretty much all of this. Squeaks. Almost all of that fret. Now we've got one more we can do, and then we run out because we can't do the first and the last fret. There's nothing to compare them to. Well, there isn't a fret on the other side you can use. Okay, so what I can do is I'm just going to mark this up with being as careful as I can not to get it anywhere on the fingerboard, but I want you to be able to see quite clearly the amount of uneven frets on this very, well, not very, but reasonably expensive, very well respected, well made Burny Les Paul copy. And you'll see that that is a lot of frets affected by the problem of unevenness. Now if we just do the number count, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22 frets minus 2, okay, that you can't get to, they don't count. So you're talking out of 20, easy for doing percentages. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 out of 20 is 75%. So I'm just going to go to here and onto my leaderboard, 75%. That's pretty chunky. That's down in the not very good end. So this is the Burny Les Paul. Hits the scoreboard with a glorious 75% of uneven frets. I'm going to put that onto the leaderboard a bit later on when I rearrange it all. But it is down in the region of shame. Okay, so here's where you would start now. You wouldn't do the marking bit, but I've done it. You might do it just for interest. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mark all of these frets with permanent marker, and I'm going to go right over the top of them and I'm going to try not to skid too far off the end because I do not want this pen sneaking under the radar and getting onto the fretboard because it's deadly. So I'm trying to keep the touch fairly light and stop at the end. Now once we've done this, this marker pen's dead handy because what it does is it lets me see now exactly where the fret leveling file has been, and it will show up very easily. Now what I might want to do at this stage is I might want to get a couple more of these bench cookie things and just support this neck a tiny bit. I just want to take any sag out of it, and it may just be maybe a little inaccurate, but if it drops down, I just want it to just about be supported. A little bit more, fold it double again. It's not very high tech as you can see, but it tends to be good enough to do the trick. Are we there? Are we there? Now we've still got a bit of room to go. I'll fold it one more time. It's probably better to get solid things to do this, but I didn't happen to have anything to hand. Okay, are we there? Are we there? No, typical. Needed 3, but not quite 3. Let's try this. Too high. Oh, it's so unfair. So unfair. It's never the case. You can never get exactly what you need out of it. If I don't get it this time, I'm going to give up. Oh, I give up. It's fine. We'll just be careful. Right. So the job now is to get the fret file. I'll put this on a bit of a more level footing, quite literally, so that we don't have any movement. Make sure that the tuners at the end are supported. Right. Okay. You've got a good view of this now. Grandstand seat. Ta-da! We take this thing. One thing to note, that pickups here are wound down anyway low enough so they won't be in the way. And I'm going to begin by running this down the edge of the fret and keeping an even pressure all the way down to the nut. And I'm going to just lean it off the edge a little bit so I can make sure I bite the edge of it, and then come back in and bring it towards the middle. Main thing is that it's always flat on all the frets. It's quite hard to do that when you're starting with, you've got to try and start on the first fret. So you kind of put a little bit of extra pressure on at that end, but you have to avoid skipping the file. It tends to want to kind of shudder its way along, which we don't want. So I'm looking at it. I don't know if you can see from where you're looking. It probably looks all just shiny to you, but I can see patches of mostly shiny, but I can see little gaps of black marker pen where I haven't touched the fret at all, and particularly around probably the first and the last couple up here. So I'm going to need to make sure I get those, and to do that and make sure I capture everything else, I'm going to start at this end this time, get it flat, and then come back all the way along and try and make sure I run off the end here to get those last ones, and then move inside a little bit and do the same, and keep on moving to the end. And avoid hitting the pickups if possible. Now, for me, that tells me I've got most of that one done. That one's 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 done. That one. 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 A bit missed there. Little dent there, and a couple of bits missed at the end here. So I'm going to just do a little bit more at this end, concentrating on this first couple of frets. and then I'm taking them down, quick run down the end again, and making sure that the weight now is off, and just picking up the last little bits. So having done that, now what I do is I'll brush off, if I can find the brush, I'm going to brush off all the swarf stuff. It's pretty sharp and deadly, and I don't want it biting into any of the bodywork or anything. So what I'll do now is I'll get the fret rocker again, and I'll go back to where I was, and I'm going to just check the little tiny bit left there. I can see it. So I'm going to just take a little bit more here. I'm going to pull it from the back end. Okay, flat, okay. And you basically want to check everything you've done, or everything you've marked, sorry, first of all. That's the main thing. You can check absolutely everything again if you want to, but most of all check what you've marked originally to make sure that whatever it was you said was suffering from uneven frets has now been levelled by this operation, and I can tell you that is pretty much the case. There was one little bit back there which still had some of the original rocking in it, but everything else is pretty much good. Right, so that's that stage done. We know those frets are now level. It's scary looking because we've taken off quite a bit of material, and the frets now appear. I'm going to show you a close-up by miracle of levitation. So you can now see how how flat those frets are underneath where we've gone over with the file. And also what you'll maybe be able to sort of sense or see is that there's a whole load of longitudinal scratching from the fret file, and that scratching will remain there even after we've reprofiled the fret. The reprofiling of the fret will round it all off, but it will leave a little peak along the top which still has these scratches from this evil beast here. And so that once we get to the third stage, which will be the polishing, we'll have to do some hard work to get rid of those scratches, and then move on to progressively finer papers until we can polish it. So next step is we take the marker pen again and we go over everything we've just done, and we're now painting on top of the flattened and scratched frets. Now the purpose of the marker pen this time round, it's a similar kind of indicator, but it works slightly differently. This time, I'll show you in a minute, actually I'll show you now. This time we're aiming to, let's have a look down, we're aiming to take a concave file, which is in fact this beastie here, and we're going to rub that file across the frets, and it's going to go like that, and it's going to take off the edges of the frets because it will be flattened in this example. It'll take off the edges, and we're going to stop before it takes any of the top surface of the fret off, because if we take any of the top off, we're in danger of lowering the fret, and therefore we'll, oh God, I've just dripped some down the side. We're in danger of lowering the fret and then causing ourselves the same problem we started out by trying to fix, which we don't want to do. So this marker pen this time lets us know when we've hit the top of the fret and we don't want to go any further, and we'll know that we've done it right if we leave a thin black strip of marker pen right down the middle of each fret. That's how we'll know that we've done it right. So I'm going to take my, what is this, jumbo frets? Yeah, I'm going to take my jumbo fret reprofiling tool, and I'm just going to work away on this fret, and I'm cutting the shoulder off the fret, and by doing so reshaping it into a nice rounded fret, and I've left a little tiny smidgen of black at the top, and it tells me I haven't really taken anything further off the height of that. Let me just try, I want to try something with the medium edge on this a minute, because I have a feeling these might not be quite as jumbo as I'd like. I think that actually is the case, so I'm going to stick to the medium end of this. Oop. Feels a little bit better. So I can see a really nice strip of black down the middle. And once I've got that, then I move on. Now, this is a diamond file, so it's kind of quite fast acting. The concave surface has got little diamond bits impregnated in the side of it, so it really doesn't hang about. And I can see, even while I'm leaving a little thin strip, I can still see the scouring of the fret file. It's laughing at me, mocking me. Careful. So it's quite a lot easier than doing it by hand. I'm just going to check the time here. Right, it's coming up to 10. Much easier than doing it by hand. I used to do it with a little three-sided triangular file like this, which has one soft edge, which allows you to work on the fingerboard without cutting through the paper. And you just sort of work on the edge and work your way over the shoulder on one side, and then work your way over on the other side. And it was effective, and it was easy enough to do. It took a bit longer. In some ways it was a little bit more precise, but this is easier, that's for sure. And this tool is a very good example of a typical luthier's tool. You pay your money for time saving and consistent performance, really. That's what you get out of this. We're in stage 2, fret reprofiling, turning these frets back into nice dome-shaped pieces of metal. Otherwise they'd just be horribly flat, and really that not only messes up your intonation, but it also, as you can imagine, makes it practically impossible to bend a string or play nicely. Careful. This design of tool with the curve in it is designed to allow me to get access to these frets without danger of running onto the body of the guitar. It's kind of a neat little innovation there. Something great about the process of making tools to make certain jobs easier. I can really imagine that people who've been doing something for years the kind of excitement and enthusiasm to come up with a new way of doing something that will make the job so much easier for someone like me who they've never met, but will be forever grateful for the time-saving, energy-saving innovation they've made. Getting tired now. It's funny, I'm getting tired at the business end where the finish is, so it's a bit like the old warning that motorists or the advanced motoring organisations always remind you that the majority of road traffic accidents happen within something like a quarter of a mile of your home, because you switched off and gone into kind of not paying attention mode or tired. By definition, you're either leaving and you're not fully awake, or you're returning and you're tired. And the same applies here. We're getting down to the last few frets, and it is quite tiring to do this. You're gripping a tool all the way through, and it's the bit at which you really want to be careful now, because you don't want to damage the finish in somebody's guitar because you fell asleep at the wheel of some guitar equivalent. See, it's easy, very easy to run off the end like that. So I'm going to lighten up on my touch at this point, because I've got time more than I've got money to pay for a refinish. So I'd rather do a light touch for this last bit, make it last a bit longer. As I say, this offset shape is designed to let you get into these difficult places now, where the neck meets the body without scraping, or running the risk of scraping the finish. You can also see that I'm also just slightly rocking the tool from side to side. Helps me to kind of just cut the shape down and make that black marker pen in the middle just slightly thinner. Okay, so we are on the last one. Whiz back and have a look. Maybe that one there is a little bit too much left on there. You can take a bit more off by tilting the tool. That's better. Okay, that's us done. Hang up the tool for another day. We do have a kind of gummy rubber thing that's used to try and clean the bits of metal out of the thing. It's worth doing. Doesn't look like it takes the stuff out, but this certainly gets the gummy rubber gets a lot dirtier, so it must be working in some sense. So this next bit is probably the most challenging bit of all, and it's the bit, actually I found when trying to show someone else how to do this, it's the bit that if somebody doesn't get it to begin with, there's no way they're going to get it, understand it, until they do their own guitar and perhaps get it wrong. It's so critical to get this bit right that if you do get it wrong, it practically forces you to restart the whole fret polishing process, and that's a pretty miserable thing if you've spent hours on it. But certainly if you're kind of charging your time, or you're trying to make money doing this, going back to square one at any time is really not a viable option, and you don't want to be doing it. So here's what the principle is. I'm going to prepare some 320 wet and dry paper and some 600 and stack them where I can see them. And I'm going to use those, and when I've done, I'm going to use a set of micro mesh papers, which are sort of fine polishing papers, and they're brilliant for taking down from 1500 down to 12,000, which is hardly anything, but it's shining at that point. And with those, I'm going to use this pointed foam block, which is really helpful to get in and out of these. And I'm going to need a couple of other things for this job. I'm going to need my trusty magnifying glass, my sleuthing magnifying glass, and then one more thing, I'm going to need my special old chap's spectacles, also a bit cleaned. And you could probably start to guess from this that being able to see the tiniest of scratches on this fret, on any fret, is what I'm after here. And the basic principle is this. Currently at the top of these frets we have scratches from this thing. We attack those scratches with 320. Right? We then check the frets to be absolutely certain that the 320 paper has removed every single scratch from this. If it hasn't, we do more 320 until it has. Then when it has, we check again. We've then only got 320 scratches, and then we go at it with 600 paper until such times as we have removed the 320 scratches, and all the scratches we can see on there are 600 scratches. Then we go to the 1500 paper, micro mesh, and so on and so on and so on until we get a shiny set of frets. And at that point we do a once over with the Dremel and some polishing compound. So you got the principle there. It's fairly straightforward. We don't move on to the next level until we've removed the marks of the previous level, and we've got to be ruthless with this. If we get this wrong, it's so easy to go all the way through to end up with 22 beautifully shiny frets, and then find there are miniature, tiny, microscopic scratches which absolutely screw up playing the guitar. So this bit is ruthless. Okay, so to begin with, I'm going to get my 320 and I'm going to go up and down this neck with this 320 and my fingers, and I'm just going to let my fingers go up and over the top, and I'm going to remove as much of the black, the scratches and the marker pen as possible. And I'm going to run off the end here as well, and be careful not to scratch the finish, or indeed to cut through the paper here. And if the paper starts to lift off, we get our masking tape and we put some more on. We absolutely, under no circumstances do we ignore when the paper lifts up. We just flatten it down, hold it down, and we move, carry on. If it goes down, if it lifts up down here, we cut some more if we have to. Right, there's just no way we're going to let it lift up and leave it, because if we do, we will pay for it with a ruined fretboard. And on a guitar as nice as this, that would be quite some crime. And I wouldn't forgive myself, far less John. Now, the thing to try and remember while you're doing this is that this 320 paper is more than capable of reducing the frets down, because of course what it's actually doing right now is it's removing metal from the frets. And the secret is, so while it is doing that, you just need to make sure that you're doing a consistent amount to all the frets on the neck, and you're not doing any one patch more than any other. So I'm going to do it with two hands, make sure I get, right, here goes the paper's lifting up. There's my scratching paper. Okay, that's okay, it hasn't, that was an extra piece of paper. I'm keeping an eye on it, and if it lifts any more up, I'm going to leap in and recover if necessary. So at the end of this, when this paper is worn out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a close-up look with a magnifying glass to check and see how I'm progressing with my scratch removal, knowing that I want to remove all the fret leveling file scratches and replace them with 320 scratches. That's the objective. And again, I'm being very careful around this end of the body, knowing that I'm masked off, it's safe. As long as I make sure none of the masking tape comes off, I'm safe, nothing's going to get damaged. Okay, so I've worn the first two bits out. I'm going to brush off the goo, and it really is a bit filthy at this point. You expect your guitar is going to get dirty. You're going to need to wash all that off at the end. So, first moment of test, okay? I'm going to look up close and I am going to ruthlessly check. I'm going to probably do it in better light for the time being. And I'm going to look and I want to see, I want to spot any fret leveling file marks at all on the frets. And if I find them, we're going to do some more with the 320. Even if I find one, right, the rule I set myself is just one means more treatment with the 320. And what I've discovered after quite a lot of time is that discipline will guarantee a really smooth playing fretboard. If I don't have that discipline and I want to go off and finish early, or get home and have a cup of tea or whatever it is, you know, if I lose that discipline, then what will happen is I will end up giving a customer back their guitar with scratches still in the frets, which will make the guitar hard to play. And I've just spotted one right down here on the third to last fret. It's the only one on the whole of the fretboard that I could see. Okay, but I'm going to attack it with a bit more because that's the rule to get this right. And I'm going to attack it first, and then I'm going to make sure I include all the others as well, because this has to be a consistent amount of sandpapering. We want to make sure that everything goes down consistent level. You can have another look in a second. I suspect it's gone now, but third from the end, just still see it. Oh, it's amazing. Right, I'm going to expend one more piece of 320 on this. At which point I'm going to then declare it quite successfully done, and I will give myself papers and permission, release papers, to move on to the 600 grit. Now, the 600 grit, once you've got rid of, well, I'll put it this way, the difference between the scratches left by 320 and the scratches left by the file, fret leveling file, are huge amount. It's a huge amount of grits, if you like. So the jump now from 320 to 600 is quite easy, and it won't take hardly any time. Replacing the 320 scratches with 600 will be very quick. In fact, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch to the block and go straight into the 600. Again, letting the paper or the block ride up and down over the frets, so it avoids getting a flat top. Now I can tell, having made sure that I've got rid of the fret leveling file marks, I'm now confident that what I do here will be heading towards a really nice smooth neck, smooth frets I should say. Now the next jump, when I just check this, just to be on the safe side, the next step that we go will be from these 600 grit marks, which now are really fine actually compared to what we were doing before. This is very, very fine, and everything's beautifully 600'd, even with just one piece, and that's how effective it is when you get the first bit right with the 320. But here's the next bit, and this is going to take longer. So again, think of the jump between 600 and 1500 is double, or you know, it's a 600, 900, a 900 jump. So I'm going to spend more time on this one than before, maybe a good couple of minutes, just so we can make sure that the 600 marks, scratches, are now picked up and smoothed out by this new 1500 one. And now I'm not going to look with a magnifying glass again at this point, because if I did, I wouldn't really be able to see anything. The scratches are now so fine it's almost impossible to see. There you go. Now we can bundle forward quite quickly, because the gaps now are smaller. So it's now 1800. And away we go. 2400. From where you're looking, this just looks like we're shining now and polishing. It's kind of what we're doing, but that's what polishing is. Scratching the thing with ever decreasingly small particles. This is micromesh stuff, is absolutely brilliant. I swear by it. You can do almost anything with it. And by that I mean you can shine almost anything with it, or polish almost anything. 3600. Starting to get a really nice shine coming up on these now. be honest, I don't know what I'm going to put some finishing compound on this afterwards, and I haven't quite worked out what grit the compound actually acts as. So for all I know, I could be kind of going backwards a bit, which would be a bit of a shame. Shame if we were. Just checking. 8,000, second to last one. And finally, 12,000, followed by a quick one over with the Dremel. And that will be it for this evening's work. Okay, so that's our fret leveling, our fret reprofiling, and our fret polishing, almost done to the last tiny bit. I'm going to pull up the Mr. Dremel. We're going to hook up. I think we'll put on fairly good condition. I've only used this once before. Put on this brush. And this time I'm going to use a slightly finer compound than I usually use, because I have a feeling I'm going backwards, which will be a foolish thing to do. And so I'm going to use G10 compound on here. I'm going to squeeze a bit out and blob it straight on, and it's fairly liquidy, so this will fling off everywhere nicely very quickly. We just need enough get a bit of a soaking on the brush, and right, just sort of make sure it's all over the place. That's G10. Very good stuff for G10. Very good for polishing lacquer and paint as well. Okay, so first of all, it's going to get a bit noisy, but I'm going to make sure this gets a bit of a soaking with this stuff before we kick off. It's going to fling everywhere, but rule number one, hold the Dremel with two hands. If this chuck hits those frets, you're back to square one, so you cannot afford that. This is going to throw goo everywhere, so you will get a dirty splattering on your guitar. Be prepared for that, and you'll have to wash it off. But it's a small price to pay for such beautifully clean frets. And like I said, two hands. dokie. We are done. Going to wipe off most of the goo quickly. Plenty to wipe off on the headstock and everywhere else, but we'll make sure we come back to that. Meanwhile, we just take the tabs that we've put on earlier on and wipe them off. Makes it a lot easier doing it that way. Again, there is lots of goo that gets chucked onto the neck at this point from the Dremel and all the little bits of dust that come off, and you can see how dirty it all is. So expect the guitar to be dirty again at this point, in need of another polish over, another naphtha bath, but it's worth it. And we get up to the end here and the tabs don't quite apply anymore, so it's thumbnails only at this point. Avoid any temptation to use a knife, no matter how desperate you are to get right through to the end quickly. Using a knife will just end in misery, there's no doubt about it. So you will still have quite a bit of the black goo on your frets and all about, so be patient, get all your tape off, and then you'll be in line for a run over with lighter fluid, get most of the goo off, and we'll be ready then to pretty much to restring and get on with the business of setting the relief and put this pile of stuff away. And we'll just get some naphtha. Luckily we've got an industrial sized container of this stuff, which is just as well. It's not cheap, but it's worth it, because it's really nice to have loads of it to do this kind of thorough cleanup. And I'm just going to, remembering you are taking stuff from off the fretboard and between the frets, or down the side of the frets. There's quite a lot of goo and crap come out of that last process. So give everywhere a good thorough going over, including, if you can, the headstock, because that will have picked up loads as well. And everything will be a bit mucky. But once you've done, you then can give it a quick dry polish over. You, my friend, are looking at a beautifully levelled, freshly shined up new set of frets, beautifully reprofiled, glistening, ready to go, and all nice and level too. That's the main thing. Ready to be restrung, put under tension, and set ready to play. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop here. I'm going to put this guitar in its case and take it back into the safety of the house, where it will stay until I come back to it tomorrow. And hopefully it's been interesting for you to spend time with me, watching me do this. Otherwise, there is the off button. You are welcome to use it. As I said many times on these Reloved Guitars videos, they're not the be-all and end-all truth, the holy grail of how to do things. They are just a way of doing things that I've discovered or learned, and that works well for me and seems to produce results that people like, evidenced by the fact that I'm here doing this guitar right now. For somebody who picked up and felt what it was like to play the guitar of somebody else that I also did a setup for, and it was that got me this work, and that's the way it should be. Okay, So time to knock it on the head for today. Burny, hard work done, bit easier from here on. We'll get the rest of it back together again and we'll be heading in towards a good setup. Bye. Whoa, okay. So, listen to Radio 4 and reassembling the Burny Les Paul after having done the fret leveling yesterday. We have something needs taken care of in the back here, which is that the selector switch is spinning, so we need to handle that a moment.
Walking alone into the cafe that particular day, Otto spotted her by the window, settling down at an adjacent table and calculating the best strategy for interrupting her reading.
Sorry if I'm just into doing mode at the moment. Not much to say about this. It's been a long day.
By her confidence and maturity, if a little taken aback by her comfortable English accent. You are not from New York, then?
No.
I'm home counties.
Radio 4 play. Radio 4 play. Okay, so let's have a look.
Which is how I came to study. New York must have been exciting. Yes, I enjoyed it greatly. But I decided to come back home to complete my studies. And you're Austrian, I hear. Technically, yes, although I haven't actually lived there since I was young.
No.
German remains my first language, however, and the accent...
I'm going to just tighten this up with a screwdriver,
Not too far away.
making sure that the switch is staying in the right position.
And you are renting there? She looked a little awkward. No, it's a family heirloom. My parents have owned it for years. I've heard a rumor that you were something fast. Is that right?
Okay, I have no more grip to do on this. It should be enough.
I have a room in London. And that drew you down there.
Finger tight, but with a bit of extra oomph, and that will be fine. Keep that in place.
Out for the college were lost, and so I had to find somewhere quickly. And then once I was there, I seemed to like it. The atmosphere is different. They are maybe more like human beings down there. They both laughed. You will have to excuse me. My English is still not always so good. I express myself a little oddly on occasion. It's okay. I understand what you mean. Bloomsbury can feel a little artificial sometimes, although it's a shame that you're so cut off from everyone. You should think about leaving the human beings and coming up to live with the Bloomsbury set. We think of you sitting down there all alone, brooding away in your...
Flip it over, put it in a nice comfy position. Just let it touch the deck just about. Yep, that's nice. Okay, so time to restring it, set the action. One thing I noticed about these, the Burny, it's got, these posts are slightly bent. I'm not quite sure what that really means, except that other than it kind of tightens up in a sort of an interesting pattern. It tilts forward and back, forward and back. Very weird.
He was becoming emotional. Tears were squeezing their way out of the corners of his eyes. He was relieved.
The truth is, if you want to, I guess you would have it leaning one way or another.
Do you have itinerary for the film?
It was all the way down. I think it came from all the way down, so I don't suppose the bridge really minds either way. It'll sit on. Yeah, doesn't look like anything. It's just got an interesting sort of bend to it. Anyway, and now we have the bridge lifting pins, whatever they're called, and they are only adjustable by thumb screw, which I know it's traditional, kept in keeping with the.
Also there by Nigel Packer was read by Alan Cordia. It was abridged by Jeremy Osborne, produced by.
I have to do some music. Hold on.
to turn out. It's the perfect.
That's some superb old. So, oh no, this is going to mess up my. I can't do that, can I? Oh, really sorry. No, I realised that I can't do that on YouTube because I'll get copyright duffed up. Sorry. Anyway. Right, if I remember rightly, this bridge was right down on the stops when we took it off, so I'm going to go straight back there. That's interesting. It's tight fit. It's a very tight fit, and I'm not going to get to adjust it unless I start with it. Start with it. Wound right down to the bottom to begin with. Okay, there we are. That's the bridge on. Okay, so I'm just going to go straight into restringing, and I'm going to go with a set of 10s here. Got a lot of work to do on this nut in a minute, so now just having a look at this. That isn't the case. We are not down on the stops according to this. It's really hard to adjust. I'm going to start with that. Really hard to adjust these. I'm just going to try and get it at the same level. Right, it's a bit easier once we get off the deck. Okay, let's have a look what we got. Okay, not so bad to begin with. Okay, so I'm pulling through, pulling back an inch, no more, and winding it on. Hello, Morris. Super, what is it? Super grade. Super grade. Still got flies in this bleeding place. Yeah, the thing is, if you put radio on while you're doing stuff on YouTube, YouTube will recognise it using its amazing music recognition, take that and that, music recognition algorithms or something, and come after you and give you grief on the copyright front, which is only fair, but rather than have that hassle. God, I wish this fly would go and die. So, Burny Les Paul, let's see if we get a bit of a better playing action out of you. And oh, go away! How annoying! Where is that fly? There it is. I've got to get rid of it. I'm ever so sorry. Nature lovers of the world, unite. Got away. It escaped. Right. I don't know what rubbish I'm listening to on the radio for. It's sort of keeping me company in the shed in the late night. So are the kittens, as it happens, but most of the time they just cause more trouble. Morris, why don't you eat flies? That would really help. Sorry, I'm in the way of the camera here. Got down there, Morris. No, you can't eat the wires. For goodness sakes, do not eat the wires. Oh, Morris, stop it. He's eating my headphone wires now. Not good. Right, last string on. No, I can't sing Your Lying Eyes. I'll get done for copyright. Right, drinkers out of the way. It's a big bag of rubbish to be cleared away now. Right. Oh, we've got no strings in here to test tune it. Okay. Now, Morris. So, no idea about action yet, but we'll get down to that in a second. What do I do with my phone? Phone. Let's see if we've got a tone for a tune on here. Should do. Play me a pipe. Okay. Ooh. How do we make it play? Play it. How do I make it play? I would like it to play the note. C4, A4. Can I make it play anything? Pitch pipe, waveform, sign, support. Done, pitch pipe. How do I make the pitch pipe work? That's the most important bit. Mm-hmm. Well, I can't make it do anything. Let's try this. Tuning it with this thing again. Don't know how to make the pitch pipes work. Okay, so let's see what we've got. We've got an action. We'll check what the action is on this. An action of around. Can't see in this light. Action around currently 2 point something. So what I'll probably do is get a light on here so I can see the bloody thing. No, that won't work. That will work. Okay, we're looking at one point five, just on 1.5, so we can go down a little bit to begin with. Let's take it down a little bit. That's up, that's down a little bit. We'll check again, using the lighting. 1.5 still. Which way is it? Oh yeah, down, come on. Bloody hell, hard work. 1.5. So we were down on the ground before, that's the thing. Hard to do, God. Nice invention, Mr. Gibson. If only we had some sort of special iron fingers to do this, probably a tool for it. Okay, so we have 1.5 exactly at the moment. Possible we could get a little bit more down, but that's about it. I'm just going to move it a bit at a time. Pushing down on the thing. See where we get to now. Alright, that's 1 millimetre. 1 millimetre, yep. Let's see if it plays on one on this side. And that'll be the test really. See whether the notes will ring or get any sort of buzzing. Okay, so that's not going very well. That's probably because right now the neck has no relief in it at all, so we're going to need some relief in here. So I'm going to just plonk it there for a second. Get our thingies. Where did I put them? There's this creature's buzzing around still. Okay. So let's see what we need here. Okay, we want to dial in some relief. My chart says counterclockwise will give me some relief. Come on then, Mr. Burny, give me some neck relief. So the lower the action you go, the more precise you're going to have to be with your neck relief in order for the guitar to work. If you get that bit wrong, not enough relief, and you've really lowered the action loads. God, there's flies everywhere. That's when you're going to really hear it, and you'll get sort of buzzing notes. Still buzzing. Beautifully out of tune just this second. Well, keep on having a check on this, on the relief in the neck. Now we don't want too much because, as we discovered the other day, the Les Paul structure doesn't allow you to have any relief from until you get to about here, probably 13th fret. So it's from the 13th fret that it kicks in. Which means, it's quite interesting, you can have, so yeah, due to the nature of the way the Les Paul is built, this whole block here, part of the neck is solid, stiff. First of all, it's 3 times thicker than the neck here, and it only becomes the third thickness by about this point here. So, but also not only is it 3 times thicker all the way up here, it's also glued into 3 faces, 1, 2, and well, actually maybe 2 faces glued against 2 faces of the body, and that makes this whole chunk completely stiff. So when you do dial in some relief, you get the relief pretty much from here to here, and what you get is a kind of a relief curve here, but then it straightens out here, and it means that the notes down here are okay. Here they'll be iffy because they'll be hitting up against the straight edge here. That's coming into contact. So the only way around that really is to raise the action just a tiny bit. But in doing so, what you then do is you kind of remove the need for just quite so much relief. So what I'm seeing, it's not so bad actually. I'm seeing down here the telltale curve. I've got a straight line first, followed by a bit of a ski slope, which is your, and I'm beginning to see regularly now, is the Les Paul ski slope. There's no real way around it. If you can have some relief at all, it's going to follow that pattern. The question is, I think on this Les Paul we can't get as far as that incredibly low action, so I'm going to have to wind some of it back up, and we'll try again. But to do that, I'm going to need to use my screwdriver to give me some bite. Let's see what happens. Yeah, interesting, these Les Pauls and their funny necks, I tell you. So this is currently now sitting at 1.5, a bit over 1.5, and we've got, there's no point checking the relief there really, because the relief works from there to there on this guitar. Probably a little bit more than it needs. From the tuning. Come on, it takes forever. And take some of the relief out of that neck now. I don't like that much. Ski sloping going on. very tricky to get this. So I'm going to go clockwise a tiny smidgen. I can get this thing in the right place. In you go. Thank you. And we may have to just accept that the action won't go lower than 1.5 millimeters. I suspect that is going to be a limitation that I'll continue to see in most Les Pauls. It's kind of counterintuitive in a way, because what I've done is I've reduced the amount of relief in the neck there, and actually that's then cured the buzzing problem, because the buzzing problem was caused by the mismatch between the relief in the neck and the straight part of the neck, and that's what I've noticed so far. I'm going to draw you a little diagram of what it does as far as, and again, I'm not a technical expert in this, but this is what I've seen a couple of times, and it sort of goes against what sort of instinct will tell me should happen. Well, yeah, intuition, you think, will tell you a different thing. So, what we've got, where's my pen? Come along. Where's the pen, Jeremy? Okay, I'll use this. It's not ideal, but will do. Yeah, so what will I use that? Maybe I will. Okay. So what I'm noticing quite often is in this first chunk of the guitar you get a straight line like that, and then when you look down the neck from 13th fret it then goes like that. So this section here is held rigid because it's glued into the body, which keeps it rigid. It's 3 times thicker, and so it's kind of like sort of goes like this at that point. And all of this side here is glued to a great big wodge of mahogany. It's also, as you can see, clearly nearly 3 times the thickness of this, which will make it a massive amount stiffer. So those two things combined pretty much keep this rock solid level, whatever happens. Okay. So when you dial in some relief into this, and imagine the relief is, let's draw a green line. So the relief, there's this sort of horizontal line of your strings, and there you've given yourself relief, which allows you to, your strings to rotate round or swing round. What you, in a sense, the more relief you have, you'd expect the cleaner your note should be. On a guitar where the whole length of the neck is able to do that, for example, a typical Fender guitar, and that would be a Gibson Les Paul, and that would be a Fender Strat, for example. Where this bow takes up the whole of your neck, in a sense, it's true that when you've got a very low action to the doesn't quite work, it's a bit extreme, but when you measure a low action there, this amount of extra relief allows you to have what looks like a really low action, but you still have the kind of room for the strings to kind of rotate the way they do in that sort of pattern, skipping rope pattern, and that would work. You'd have lots of room. Your action would appear to get bigger in the middle, in a sense, as you go down here, if you have that much relief in it. But it would still work, and you wouldn't get any buzzing or choking. But the problem is, when you dial in too much relief into a Gibson Les Paul type neck, what I'm noticing is, because only this front 2/3, it's actually not even 2/3 really, is it? It's yeah, okay, in physical length it is. The first 2/3 of the neck is where the relief happens, or most of the relief happens. In fact, none of it seems to happen here. It's just a bit there if you look down the neck or down the fingerboard. So the relief kicks in there, and then if you do loads of relief, what happens is your strings still end up bashing into this flat set of frets up here. So it kind of doesn't help you at all to have loads of relief, because I guess what happens is when when you press a string down into there, about this point here, and you press onto that fret, and this thing tries to come up to the bridge here, what you literally get is it goes bzz, and hits this peak here, as annotated by my arrow, and you can see that just as I was getting there, the treble frets are right there, because you're fretting them and they're hitting this plateau here that you get with your Gibson neck. So what it actually means is you're kind of forced to reduce the neck relief counterintuitively, and reducing the neck relief here would probably result in buzzing starting to happen because you're running out of space. Reducing the neck relief here actually frees up that buzzing, and we've got a much cleaner playing set of notes without actually adjusting the action any further. So whereas we had some duff notes there, we've freed them up. So I'm kind of happy with that the way it is. I'm not going to do anything else. There is I suppose, to be just technically precise, we could try going back a little step on the action, back to where we were, the lowest possible setting, just to see if we can, if it plays at that lowest possible setting, because it's one of the things we wanted to explore for John, whether we'd get the 1mm action out of this and still get a clean note. And in a sense that was sort of what we were hoping for. No, no, I don't think we can. I think we're stuck to the 1.5mm, because what we've got there now is, in fact, what we've done is we've taken nearly all the relief out, but that's as much as I'd like to have in there for this reason, this untechnically explained reason. So what I'm going to have to do is end up redoing the compromise back with the action, but I'm just going to wind it as slowly as I can. See, I think where we were before was the nice sweet spot. What I also know is it's going to improve a little bit when we get down to reducing the nut action. Still a bit too much buzz for my liking, so just dial in a little bit more. We saw a little bit of fresh air under the screw here, something like that. And we check the height on this. Again, measured in my terms at the 22nd fret, and that is spot on 1.5. Now what I know is that the treble end of it isn't the same. But it is ringing cleanly, and I do have therefore a bit of room to go down on that, which I will take it down a little bit so I can figure out which way it goes on here. Come on, down you go. Just want to end up with it pretty much the same, still a little bit more than the bass side. In a way, that neck relief still feels a fraction too big, but we'll stop there. nice sound so far. Okay, so having done that bit and explained that bit, I'm quite comfortable with the playing action set as is at the moment, but then we're going to go into this next bit, which is quite critical. And this next bit is the, let's see where we can get the best positioning for this. 3 of those, 2 of those, hard to tell. We just want a little bit of support, we don't need to lift it up too far. That's okay, that'll do. Okay, so again, bearing in mind that I know that this will be under gravity's pull, this will be bending the neck up somewhat. But what we're looking to do here is we're looking to set the action of the nut. So that's the string height of the nut. If I can find where I've put the tool for this, and it's a bit of a mess in here at the moment. I'm losing my bearings where all things are. I think it would be in here. Yes, it is. Right. Time for a bit of a rejig. Okay, so what I've worked out with an action set like this down at the bridge, I've noticed that a 0.25 action over the first fret is a really optimal action. And what I've noticed on these guitars and many others that have come through, it's considerably higher than that. And if I just gently go under this thing here, I can see a lot of fresh air between this string and this feeler gauge, and that means that I'm going to work at this bone nut. Now this nut has been beautifully fitted by the luthier who previously worked on this guitar, to the degree that it's even been had lacquer put over the end in order to finish it and make it purdy. But there's a but. It hasn't been, the slots haven't been cut really down to the right sort of depth, and as a result it means that the action over the first fret is too high. So I'm going to use a variety of tools, slightly the wrong gauge files, but they'll do in combination with another set here to cut that 10 gauge. This one will do. Just drop it in there, lovely. So the secret here is I'll try and do this without getting in the way all the time. Sorry about this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use my combination of different files to cut down the slots a little bit, blowing away the leftovers, and every now and then I'm going to drop the string back into it. Get it roughly to pitch, it doesn't have to be exact, and then I'm just going to get my feeler gauge under there again, look using a visual cue, and see if it's anywhere near it. If it's not, I'm then going to go back in and a combination of different things. I'm going to do a bit of cutting with this file here, which on bone should do a fairly comfortable, easy job. Remember, as with all things here, the principle is you can take more away, you can't put it on. But we want to take it slowly so that we get down to the right sort of playing height. It's going a little bit at a time, and I'm using a combination of things here to just get the gauge about right. And I'm tilting backwards a little bit as I cut so that the string comes up the back of the nut and exits off the front. And again, go under the feeler gauge, still fresh air, and I can tell because I can drop the string down, press the string down, and hear it click. So as you can see, this is not a speedy operation, and you've got to be patient and careful as you go. The slope doesn't have to be a radical slope, but it has to be a little bit of a slope. fill some air. I'm going to cut with this one this time, try and make it a little thinner at the bottom. Now there is a get out of jail free option here if you get this wrong. I wouldn't want to get to that situation with this because it's a nicely fitted nut, so I will be very careful not to require it. But if you did, there is a way of repairing or using, you either replace the nut, which is entirely feasible to do, or you can make a temporary repair with baking powder and very low viscosity super glue, and those two things together will actually work. Okay. Okay, close to pitch, and we slip that under there. Still room, still see it going down to reach the top of it, so I'm doing all right distance wise. And where's my thing worn? It's under here, right. Cut a little bit further. Again, gently, nothing too extreme. That is almost on the mark. There's still room for still a fair bit of headroom in there. But again, we're just taking it really slowly. And I'm gonna, in a minute, I'm gonna stop this because this will go on forever. And it's kind of tiresome from this view. You just see my head working away. Okay, so I'm happy with that. That's spot on the mark. Okay, I'm going to stop this, come back when all of those are done. Alright. Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Reloved Guitars workshop. Another camera angle, very similar to the previous ones, but arranged in a slightly different way. Also, I think we have a bit of option to move it around whilst still attached to all its wires. So, you know, we'll see. That might do the business. And we can sort of, well, I don't know how much we can really, we can do things to it, I'm sure, when the time comes to do things. Anyway, I don't really know what it can and can't see very well at the moment, but I think it's probably a bit better than the overhead shot, I think. Anyway, we're kind of, the previous camera angle on the lamp sort of worked all right, but yeah, difficult to sort of interact with you, the viewer. Right, so here we are with John's Burny Les Paul copy, and we pretty much all there. We restrung it last night, and we cut the slots on the nut down to the right height. So now we have a guitar that has a 1.5mm action and is much easier to play down at that end, and also better intonation because the notes aren't going sharp. So really all that remains before we put the stuff back on, various bits and pieces, and close it up, is to do the intonation. And for this purpose I need my trusty Roland Microcube battery powered amp, which is just the best and most useful thing to have around. You just never need to worry, it's always got some batteries, and it keeps on running those batteries forever. Now I also got a phone here, which is probably currently interfering with everything. So I will now switch it off. Apologies. Because I want to use the tuner. And it's a it's a funny warm day, so I may have to lose this t-shirt thing a minute. Let me just go off. Well, I was going to go off camera, but I can't. So excuse seeing my belly. Oh, right. Put that over there. Wobble, wobble. Okay, so what are we aiming to do? We're aiming to intonate this guitar. We've got the action where we want it here. Got the nut settings where we want them. I want a clean sound on here without any distortion or anything in order to do the intonation. I'm going to have to be careful because for this I'm going to need a long-ish screwdriver with a flathead slot thing in it, and this is not my coconut. Snacking for breakfast. I'm going to need a sort of head attachment that's probably something maybe like, might be something like that actually. That's not a bad one. Kind of extra long, gives me the extra reach, makes things viable. Yeah, so for this job I'm going to need to do this with the guitar in a playing position, and I'm going to do it with the back end hanging out over here because I don't want to compress or knacker the jack plug. Okay, so I don't know if you can see, and if I was going to use, well, let's assume, let's trust you can see. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, we're going to tune this up. Now, the whole secret of the intonation part of the exercise is that the guitar is built to a certain scale length, and when you have a scale length, why do you have a scale length at all? Why don't you just grab a piece of wood, two pieces of wood, shove them together, and then work out, and put a length of string on it, and then work out what your note divisions are. Well, they don't do that because everyone would be different, and so you'd have to make a completely different. You couldn't mass produce necks, for example. So in order to mass produce necks, you basically build necks to an agreed scale length, which is a certain length of neck, a certain length of nominal length of string that you're going to be playing on your guitar, and so that the manufacturer can then go and build a consistent neck where the frets get closer together in a predictable and known ratio or rate, and one of the key components to determine that rate of how quickly they get close together is the scale length. So you feed the scale length into this equation, and you get, first one should be positioned here, second one measure a few more, blah blah blah, for a particular scale length of guitar. Then once you've made that, manufactured that neck, you put it into the guitar you've built, and the idea is you've got to make the body and the neck together align so that, or your bridge align so that you then have, you start with a nominal or notional scale length for this guitar. But the complication, or the nice little thing, is that every string then requires a slightly different length. So you have a kind of an overall notional length, and I never know what they are. I don't need to know what they are, funnily enough. But let's say it's, I don't know, 24 3/4 for this. It might not be. Don't take it as gospel. But let's say that the scale length is nominally 23 3/4. This neck is then, or loads of necks are then built for this kind of guitar with that sort of scale length. Once we put it together, we then plonk the bridge in a known place to create a string of that length to suit that neck. And there are then 6 individual adjustment points here which allow us to fine tune that. And each string has to have a tiny variation from that nominal length. And that takes into account differences in thickness and ways the strings perform. And actually I'm just looking at this and I'm thinking this is almost unadjustable intonation wise, unless I've got a very fine right-angled offset screwdriver. And I've got one, but I don't know if it's a... I have a couple, but I don't know how fine they are. Did I have some? I have a set. It's really annoying. I've got a massive one here, a little bit too big. I'm going to have to go digging for these, and that may be the only way I'm going to get to that. So on some Les Paul guitars, the correct aficionado's way is that the adjustment screws face the nut. Personally, I find it a hell of a lot easier if the adjustment screws face the bridge. Some people get hung up on that because then I find it much easier to go like that. Whereas here, I now have to go and try it and get in to adjust this screw in a very, very iffy way. First of all, the string's in the way, and secondly, the pickup's pretty much in the way for whatever decent angle I want, unless I dig and find an offset screwdriver, in which case the string is still in the way. There's so many shitty compromises when you actually take apart the Les Paul structure. I wouldn't even say compromises. Nothing is compromised. It's just there's so many design horrors when you start really working with it or thinking about it. And you know, I'm not an expert. I'm just somebody who does a few of these. So I have an offset screwdriver here, which God, even that is almost unworkable given the situation. So I really don't know how one is supposed to do these things, other than pray and hope that the intonation on this is already preset and I don't need to do anything. But I think that's a bit hopeful. So what I am going to do for now is I'm going to wind the pickup in as far as I can go, which will give me a tiny bit more. You can see why it's easier to do it back to front. In fact, on most of my guitars that I've got that have the Tune-o-matic bridge, I do it exactly that way around. If it's my guitar, I'm just going to go for the way that will allow me to adjust it easier. And there's no detrimental effect of doing it that way, by the way. And anyone who argues that there is, I'm not sure it's true. Well, that's not true. I haven't heard a convincing argument yet that says why it shouldn't work that way. I've heard plenty in my own head arguing why it should work the other way. Okay, so we go back to here and let's just see what we've got in terms of intonation. So we to check whether the string length is exactly right, we ping the harmonic and tune the guitar to the harmonic. Does that tuner even work? Okay, that's I don't know if you can see, but that's perfectly tuned on the harmonic ping. Now, if the string is the correct length, what you find is that the fretted 12th fret note is the same as the pinged harmonic on the 12th fret. Pinged, fretted. You can see it's slightly flat. Not far off. Very close. This is so temptingly close that I wouldn't want to adjust it. Well, the point is that it's slightly flat. Okay, so that, what does that mean to us? It means the string's slightly too long. So to counter it, we need to bring the bridge saddle a little bit closer towards the nut. And quite honestly, until I get going on these things, I never know which is the way to turn it, which is very, very difficult on this because the fact is, unless I can get in there comfortably without damaging anything, I'm not going to really get a chance to see which way it really works. Okay, I can see it. And clockwise, when you're looking at the screw, will wind it forward a little bit. So I've just taken it a couple of rounds forward. I'm going to go back to playing position, retune it. harmonic. Spot on. That's intonation for you. See? Next one. B. Flat again. So we're going to do the same thing with the next one. So if you're wondering why do we do this, why do we bother doing this at all? Well, getting this intonation right, first of all it means that the notes you play will be accurate all the way up and down the fretboard. That's the first thing. But in practical terms, what it means is that you can play a open chord shape up here and play it on the 12th fret, for example, an octave higher, and it will sound perfectly in tune because we've made sure these string lengths are exactly right. Small adjustments, but worth doing. Spot on! Way flat. I wish you could see this. What I'm going to do for this one, just to give you, sorry about this, manual crank. There you go, you might see a better view for now. Perfectly tuned on the harmonic. You're looking at this here, you're looking at how many cents off it is, sharp or flat. Let's tune it again. So it dips down to minus 10 cents and then back up to being about 5 flat, which is what I'm finding with the other ones. So we get this one and we do the same amount of turns pretty much as we've done for the other ones, again in the clockwise direction if we're looking head on at the screw. Once you've done a few of these you'll recognise there is a pattern, the way these things relate to each other, and you could probably just now set these things by eye as a result of having done the first one. It's very predictable. What's also good about it, by the way, is if you're buying a guitar online or from somebody, and if you don't see if you don't see a staged 1 2 3 1 2 3 pattern on these strings on a tunematic bridge, and also by the way on a Fender tremolo style bridge, if you don't see this characteristic pattern, you can, and if they're all in a line, straight line, you can be fairly sure that this guitar, the guitar you're looking at, hasn't been intonated, which isn't a bad thing. You can do it yourself, but it'll tell you a bit about. I'll tell you something about the seller, how they've treated the guitar and what they've done to it, or haven't. Fractionally flat still. The G, for some reason, is often the tricky one, so I'm just going to do a little bit more adjustment. I don't like this because you end up you can't help but clip the top of the pickup case with your screwdriver. It's not bad, but rather not. What you need to do still a bit flat. What you need to do, I was going to to say something really important. Oh yes, when you're doing this stuff, if you want to be absolutely spot on accurate, recommend that you do the intonation work like this with the guitar in its playing position. Now that will, why does that make a difference? I'm just going to do a little protection here for this thing because I don't like touching that pickup cover. It's not right. Yeah. So why in that particular position? Well, the neck of the guitar is very flexible. It's very flexible and it will bend under gravity. Tiny little bit more. It'll bend under gravity, so if you do it lying down flat like this, you will have the effect of gravity pulling the neck, not straighter exactly, but pulling it into a convex shape. So if you've got some relief dial into it, the gravity will sort of flatten out that relief a little bit, so you won't get an exactly true picture. In the playing position, obviously it's how you play, and gravity is now pulling transversely across the neck, and it's not bending so much. Spot on. I'll stop there. Flat again. So what you're seeing is this whole arrangement, the way it was set before, it was everything slightly flat, so we're kind of pulling everything forward a little bit. And actually while I'm at it, I can do the same now with the remaining the remaining group of three, because I know that there's going to be a tight relationship between those three. It's just the way it always works. It won't be perfect now, but it will give me a little head start on those. Also, the thing to do when you're doing this, you've got to be quite careful to just ring one note at a time. Spot on. Up to A. A little bit flat. So you can see that it takes a little time, a small amount of adjustment as you go, and just taking it easy. I'm going to bring this one forward as well, ready for its intonation. And the difference between doing it upright or flat is minuscule, but it's there. So somebody pointed out to me, if you want to do it properly, do it upright. We're sort of looking mainly for where the note stops, because you notice the note kind of, its initial attack, it drops down and then comes back up to its sort of settled pitch. That'll do. Up to E. pretty spot on actually. Let's go back, tune them. Because we put the strings on yesterday, this will still be subject to a bit of string give. Now I know John had said to me he was not happy with the tuning stability on this. See how much we pulled there. Okay, that's done. Ladies and gentlemen, we are complete on the Burny Les Paul copy. Just put the knobs back on and the pick guard and bits like that, and the truss rod cover. I'm just going to give it, each time I can, give it a bit more pulling on these new strings. On the note, no sharpness on that note on the first fret, which is brilliant. So ladies and gentlemen, with a bit more tweaking, pulling of the strings, we are done in the intonation department. We've got a really nice accurate intonation out of the way. It's that complicated or that simple, whichever way you want to look at this thing. Doesn't take, well, you can see it requires an amp to do it through, or a tuner. You need a chromatic tuner of some description, and once you've got that, it's a matter of just patience. It never works out the way I want it to. Patience, and just, yeah, you hold your breath, tune it up, get it right, stick with it until you're really sure that it's on point and you've got the right exactly the right intonation setting, and then you move on to the next one. So I'm now happy that this guitar is going to play beautifully. I'm going to get some Burny Les Paul bits and just really basically let's get these on and get this back in its bag, and we'll call it quits. Now, just a quick whiz through. Never quite sure. These got, helpfully, these got little indicator arrows to show you when your thing's cranked open. So wind them wide open and make sure the 10s on the knobs line up to the little guide arrow. That would be helpful. Donk, before you put it back on there. I've never seen knobs yet that go up to 11, but I am absolutely sure that some Spinal Tap wag is going to have some somewhere. Okay, now we have okay, we had an extra. I didn't like this. This is a household screw, horrible thing. So I'm going to try and replace that. In the meantime, we have the short stop screw, which is the one that goes onto the pick guard. John was saying that in fact there's a blemish or a bit of damage there on the pick guard, which was caused by the original screw on this being way too long, and every time you touched it, it was bashing against the finish, which is really stupid. But there we go, easy to make sorts of mistakes. So what I want to do is find something equivalent that will do the job in the side here. It's probably a pickguard screw more than it is a household screw. Let's find one that's reasonably clean and shiny. Let's try one of those. That's nice to have a whole pile. Sometimes it's good to buy a sort of complete set of stuff to go. You know, like it might be a whole set of Les Paul type screws, and you might get them in a kit. That's kind of handy. Or you might, alternatively, you might get yourself a couple of old Duffer guitars for spares and repairs, in which case you end up with a nice pile of leftover bits and pieces, which is really, really handy to sort out and have at hand to hand when you need them. So I've obviously got a mixture of both. I've bought some stuff and I've also rescued some screws. Well, see, what's happened here is somebody's stripped this original hole. So it's not a good idea. This current one is currently slightly too small, which is a shame, and that's why somebody's obviously gone for the what do you call it, the household screw option. But I think that's mighty ugly. So what I'm going to do is well, there's a couple of things we can do, a number of ways. Sometimes people put a little bit of tape around the screw and just give it a bit of, I guess it's a plumber's trick, isn't it? You put a little thin sliver of tape. I need a ruler to cut this on. Do I need a ruler, or I just need a metal surface? Yeah. So some people will wrap a little bit of tape around an existing screw and let it bite its way in. I'll try that before I fill the hole with anything. I prefer that to be the case. So I don't need much. This is probably too thick, this tape anyway. I'll put a bit on. Let's have a look and see what would work. Maybe just once around. So we're nearly there. As I say, what I don't really want to do is fill this. I don't really want to fill this with stuff. But in some cases, in some of my guitars, what I will do is I'll put a bit of no more nails into that hole. You know, and make sure it's cleanly done so it doesn't stick out anywhere. But what you get when you do that is a much better fix or grip. And given the fact that the hole's already stripped, you aren't losing out anyway. You're not doing any more harm. You're just stabilising a hole that's already had its day as far as being usable is concerned. Okay, this little bit of tape just going in nicely. It's fattening it out. Give it a little tight push, and that's actually acceptable. I'm really pleased with that. That will work. So then on top of that we've got, I'm silly, I did this the wrong way around. Should have known. But what it does is it gives me a chance to pull this out, and interestingly the tape has stayed in, which is good. So what I really want to do before I do that bit is to do this bit, because that is fiddly as boogery if I were trying to do that. I was trying to do that, trying to get that little nut on from underneath, I'd be all over the shop. So I can now line this up again while it's still there. I can do an extra tightening with a pair of pliers on this nut underneath the pickguard, but right now I'm just kind of keen to get this back in place first. With an extra little bit of push, that's nice, it's happy, it's under a bit of sprung tension too. Now we have a variety of little screws here. The flat-headed ones are the word I'm looking for is truss rod cover. So this pickguard screw is the one for here. That's okay, it's alright. It's got a little bit of movement in it, but that's how it sits, so I'm not really going to mess about with that. Just to make sure that we get the don't worry, this guitar is safely contained by my body, it's not going anywhere. What we can do, just to make sure this stays, you won't be able to see this, just to make sure the pickguard doesn't come undone at some point in the future, I can just get the pliers in there and just do a little extra turn into this screw, just to bite it into place. So it's not going anywhere. Ta-da! That's that. Again, say it moves by virtue of this. There's nothing we can do about it. It moves by virtue of this positioning of the screw. In fact, what's interesting is that may well be this bit of degree of flex in here. May well be why this thing has. You know what? I think the reason why this has worn out the screw hole is because this flexes, and the reason this flexes, guess what? Because the angle of this baby is wrong. It's not quite acute enough. So I can just move this to one side, and I'm just going to get my cloth into this little vise, and I'm just going to, I would tighten it up if I could. Let's find the handle. Get a bite, and I'm literally going to press it a tiny bit, and hopefully, thank you, hopefully that will ensure, well, it will get, with a bit of luck, we'll be a little bit flatter onto the deck than we were before. And I think that's what's caused this to come loose in the past. The fact that it sits slightly off. The angle's slightly wrong. I'm not sure this is going to fix it. I don't want to bend it too much because it's very weak metal. Before I know it, I would have a broken bracket on my hand, which I also don't want. But there you go. That's taken the flap out of it, which is great. So little tiny adjustments like that make all the difference. And I would suggest that after quite a bit of time, that's probably the reason why this thing has come out, because the movement, because of this flapping. Now it's flat against the deck. We're happy. Okay, so finally the truss rod cover. This is because it hangs out over the edge of the table. I'm always in danger of losing the screws at this point, so I'm going to try and ensure that it's a bit close up here. I'm sorry if my ugly mug's in the way. Okay, just going to get one in and get the others into place so we don't lose anything. Hurrah! And we'll be done on the Burny, ready to give a quick polish over and back into its beautiful hard case, or semi-hard, excuse me. Soft but hard. No, what would he call it? I don't know, there's probably some abbreviation that guitar types know. And we are complete. Oh, well, we're not complete, because when we get back in the house, this guitar will get its a Reloved Guitar's number. Now on this guitar, the numbers are removable if a customer doesn't want them. Just bear in mind you can take them off. But I think the work that's gone into this, you know, you should be proud as an owner for having put the work into it to make it play better than it did off the shelf. So I hope that you'll wear your Reloved sticker with pride. But I will also not feel at all offended if you have one of these guitars and you want to take that sticker off. It's absolutely fine by me. It's your prerogative. Prerogative? I don't know what the word is. It's up to you is what I mean. You're more than welcome to do what you want with it. But anyway, I put it on because I'm happy with the work that I've done to make this play better than it did when it arrived, and that's the main thing. That's what I'm saying with that sticker. Okay, so minus the sticker, a little bit of polishing on the end here, we are good to go, Mr. Burny. So thank you for sticking with me for the duration of this one. Taking it from a very handsome looking guitar that played okay by the looks of it, but one that John, the customer, said he wasn't quite able to get on with for some reason, and it's a guitar that had some adjustments already made. There was a replacement nut, bone nut in place, but the action was too high, and I think I demonstrated it was causing slight intonation problems, so we've taken care of that. We've set the nut to the right sort of heights. Okay, that's what are we doing? We're clunking somewhere. Are we clunking somewhere? No, we're not hitting anything. But almost on this end, so I'll just drop this down a bit. Too close if we are soloing up here. Okay. Right, we are done-ish. Yeah, so adjusted the nut action down here, got rid of the intonation issue, and also what we also managed to do was to get some graphite under there as well, so that we have some lubrication on those nut slots as well to prevent them getting into pinging mode. What I'm doing now is I'm just taking care of these little sticky out bits of wire. There's no need to have them now. We're tuned and locked in place. I'm just going to remove the potential for those things to spike you, because I'm sick of them spiking me. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. I give you the Burny Les Paul. A little bit tighter action than we had it before, and a better action down here. So I'm hoping that this does the business for the customer. Thank you for being with me.